And we are live. So, welcome to episode 226 of An American Werewolf in New Jersey. I am the American Werewolf. In the house tonight, we've got Bill the Revelator.
How are you?
What's happening, man? It's good to see you again. And for the purposes of disclosure, Bill, we'll get into that in a second. But
why you gotta attack so quick? Lube them up a little.
Yeah. No. That wasn't what I was going to. I was just going to do. Well, we'll get into that in a second.
Okay.
This is the first ever documentary that we've covered on the show, and I sort of picked it by chance. There was something else I was going to do, and I wanted to have Eric here, and Eric is just not feeling well, and he ended up even going home early from work in the middle of the day. He felt so bad. So unfortunately, he won't be able to join us tonight. And I'm especially disappointed not because necessarily he can't be here to discuss it. Yes, that's part of it. But because I think the primary thing was I wanted him to watch the documentary. Because he contacted me this morning and he's like, I'm not feeling well. He's like, I feel bad. And I said, okay. I said, tell you what. I said, no worries. I said, but, just go home and watch the doc. And then if you decide that, you're not feeling up to it, I don't have any problem with it. He's like, all right, that's fair. No problem. And he buzzed me like 3 hours later. He's like, I'm going home. He's like, I have to go to bed. He's like, I'm not going to be, worth it to anybody today. So I was disappointed by that, but life goes on.
It's a bad weekend to get sick too. The holiday.
Yeah, Memorial Day weekend. Not good. But let's hopefully, he's on the mend, and we'll have a speedy recovery soon. You're frozen again.
No way. I see myself.
I can see you too, and you're standing just like this.
Oh, dude. All right. How am I going to get out of this? Oh.
Just close yourself out, and I'll bring you back in. I'll just keep talking while you're going. So, I think the difference between this and what we typically talk about is that, with the documentary, it's nonfiction. And here we're talking about beliefs. There you are. You're moving and everything.
Oh, awesome.
And your audio and video track it's on. There's no lag. Okay, you're good.
For now.
So here, for a change, we're actually talking about belief systems. And very real phenomena. And it was going to be interesting to have some people other than the two of us on here to get perhaps some divergent beliefs, which I was open to hearing. I wasn't, here to necessarily try to convince anyone of anything. I just wanted to hear what other people had to say.
It would be good to have John here. He's in the club, but Eric and maybe someone else who's not part of the club and see what they have to say about it.
Yeah, I invited Julia, and Julia couldn't make it, which would have been interesting hearing from Julia. She's got a bit of an older, more mature, point of view. I invited Marty over in Dublin. He couldn't make it. And then I started to think, well, is it just not meant for, these people to watch this? Because none of them had seen it before. Wow. None of them had seen it before. It's just, you watch Freddy and Jason, and you watch The Exorcist. But then it strikes me as odd that, how many people actually don't see this kind of stuff, like the real actual thing, the horror, whether you believe in it or not. Demonic possession, exorcism is a phenomenon that goes back thousands of years and pretty much crosses the line through all the major religions in the world.
Yes.
It goes, the evil spirits, temptation, back to the story of Genesis, with you and I as Catholics, original sin and, the fall of man, throughout the New Testament, casting out evil spirits. And, one of the main devotees to Christ, Mary Magdalene, who was possessed of seven demons, constantly casting out. The apostles after the death of Christ, infused with the Holy Spirit, now casting out devils and demons and, doing all the work that Christ, tasked them to do. These things have continued throughout recorded history.
There's way too much of it. There's way too much of it to be coincidental. It can't just be a metaphor, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't believe that either, but I thought that this had an interesting take on it in that they actually spoke to neurosurgeons, top field neurosurgeons. They spoke to, Columbia University, the psychiatric departments in there, showing the recording of an actual exorcism. Yep. So if you're ready to go, we're talking about William Friedkin's The Devil and Father Amorth. Are you ready to go?
Let's do it.
Boogie woogie. So I should say before we get started that if you want to watch this is available on Tubi. It's a little over an hour. It's about 70 minutes. It's right there on Tubi for free, so anyone can watch this. If you ever actually want to watch an actual exorcism take place, it's right there on Tubi. It's a documentary directed by William Friedkin, who was the director of the original Exorcist film, one of the greatest horror movies of all time, maybe one of the best films of all time. It just happens to fall into the horror genre. Yep. Bill, what did you think? Now, for purposes of disclosure, you were my RCIA sponsor when I entered the church. Yep, so we have a law. Yeah, and I it's a debt that I can probably never repay. But I mean, you and I go back a long way, and now we have this sort of new, path, to kind of explore, or rabbit hole. I always say, it's kind of the ultimate rabbit hole.
We God. We met when neither of us were actually religious.
No, and not really, living any particular, lifestyle that would demonstrate that sort of thing. We met in college, so it's beer there's all sorts of things, going on. We were 18, 19 years old, that sort of thing. But going on through the decades, and then a couple of years ago, a few years ago, I said that I had been attending a Catholic mass, and you're like, hey, if you ever decide you really want to go for it and you need a sponsor, let me know. Yep. I'm not the type of person that goes to church and starts meeting people. I don't know. Maybe I should. Knights of Columbus is right around the corner. I think I'm gonna, take the plunge with that. So that's how I go about doing it. That sort of thing. But I can't just sit in the pew next to someone and start, or move over to sit next to someone, who might be praying or focusing on, whatever thing they have going on in their life, or, focusing on the Eucharist, or, life, and just start, small talking people. So
that's the delineation. When you go to mass, you're there to pray. And there's all these other ministries that you can go to have a social experience. I think some churches, they sort of are a little too fixated on the social and not enough on the praying. So, you got to keep that delineation.
Well, what I found, I started, then the Father Gerard, came up to me and said, I saw you, are you interested? And he's like, well, we're over there in the rectory, every Sunday beforehand, go over there. And he's kind of just shoved me over there, go. This kind of thing. And next thing I knew, I was in, RCIA. And,
you got to make it official.
Yeah. And, so I approached you again, and I'm like, hey, man, can I take you up on that offer to sponsor me? And you're like, yeah, no problem. So, 2 years ago during Holy Week, I was baptized and confirmed, and have been sort of, progressing, hopefully, along this way. And, talking to you, about these sorts of things and other people. And so watching this documentary for the second time, but watching it now as a Catholic, and a practicing Catholic, now I make the Latin Mass, and, I try to make confession every 4 to 6 weeks because, hey, I'm really boring and, I have nothing else to do all the time. So, it's been a while, I try to get there so, things don't take root, this kind of thing. But watching it this time had a different impact on me. Go ahead.
Yeah, that thing's been in my queue for a while on Tubi. I always pass by it. And I never go, oh, goddamn, I want to watch something about an exorcism, even though I've been a fan of Father Amorth for a real long time. I read his book, Exorcist Story, and his other book, More Exorcist Stories. I was a huge fan of that stuff. Here is the copy of The Exorcist that I stole from my parents and read when I was 11 years old. It's a great copy. And that sort of set the tone for the rest of my life. I think I was way too young to be reading that, but I was raised Catholic, and then about 14 years old, I was like, I've had enough of this, and it took me about 22 years to get back into it. So when we met, I was just sort of like a stick in the ass. I don't believe in organized religion guy, and it took me a long while to get back into realizing that, you kind of do need a church, but that's a whole other discussion. So I love Father Amorth. I'm a big fan of exorcist stuff. Even though most exorcism movies that you see get all of the theology completely wrong. It's always a mess, other than the original Exorcist, which was spot on. Most of them are just a real wreck. I did see one that was really good called The Rite. You might have seen this movie.
Sure, I own a copy.
By Matt Baglio.
Yeah.
But yeah, throughout my life, even when I wasn't practicing Catholicism, I would read lots of exorcism stuff. I was listening to George Norrie and all that stuff. And in the middle of the night, reading Malachi Martin. That's a good one if you're into
Sure, Hostage to the Devil scared the shit out of me when I was about Yeah.
All right, so so I knew of Father Amorth, and I'm glad that you gave me the kick to make me watch this thing. It was all right. I got some issues with the way it was made, but I love Father Amorth. He's this cute old 90-year-old priest doing this exorcism, and one of the funniest things was when he started the exorcism, he does this directly to the devil, which is fantastic. That's totally him. So it was really cool to see the footage of one of his exorcisms, because it's not books flying around the room and the windows banging and the bed bopping up and down. It's just someone who is really, really conflicted, and he's trying to straighten them out with prayer. And it could be an actual possession. I believe that happens. I don't know anything beyond that. I'm not an exorcist, but reading his book, he says most exorcisms are really benign. They're just like sitting around and maybe someone burps or farts or something, and that's the most of it. So this one was a little dramatic with the yelling and the convulsing. But yeah, it was fantastic to watch that footage. I thought a couple of the interviews were interesting. I don't know what was up with that Israeli doctor, though. He just was a mess. But my favorite part was, lo and behold, one of my favorite Catholic apologists, Bishop Barron.
Bishop Barron?
Yeah. I was like, I was not expecting that. And that
looking much younger, about 10 years ago. There's not as much gray.
Yeah.
And he's like a big figure now. I don't know so much back then because, I wasn't around and, in the life back then. But he's certainly a prominent figure now, in the podcasting world. And,
he was
all these things.
huge on YouTube for a long time. He would take questions and answer them, and everyone loved Father Barron. And then he became an auxiliary bishop in L.A., and he also released the Story of Catholicism documentary, which is why I think his nose was all fucked up, because he was out in the desert filming that was right when he was filming, so he had some serious sunburn on his face from filming in the desert. But it was great to see him. I love his takes on everything. He's a fantastic bishop. And yeah, so I did enjoy those parts. The Friedkin stuff, on the other hand, was a little bit much.
Was it hammy?
As a film, just as a film. All right. I like the content, but as a film, as a documentary, we're spoiled by the weapons grade documentaries that have come out in the last few years, where they're just so, like Tiger King. These things are works of art. So I'm watching the Friedkin documentary.
I never saw Tiger King. Okay.
Oh, you got it. Anyway, it was just so bad. It reminded me of those like late night sort of exploitation mystery, unsolved kind of show.
He definitely had the 1973 score, the score adjacent thing going.
Yeah, now that's his filmmaking tricks. That's a big thing in the original Exorcist, was sound design and music that really set the tone. So he's really trying hard to keep you on the edge of your seat.
To recapture that sort of vibe. Hold on a second.
But I was watching. All right.
We got a couple of comments here. Exorcist Reviews. What's up, man? Is anyone in the chat? Hello. He asked you a question. Bill, have you read Reverend Nicola's book on diabolical possession?
No.
Exorcist, if you want to use...
Thank you for the suggestion. I have not read that. I love suggestions because I'm a huge consumer of exorcism and spiritualism and demonology stuff.
If you want to jump in, I already sent you the link. So if you just want to jump into the chat, because Exorcist Reviews was supposed to join us for this. You're in Alaska, so I know your time frame is a little different. But if you want to jump in, feel free. Awesome. No problem. And come in and join the discussion, because I know you have stuff to contribute. I was personally pleased to find out that exorcisms do not take place in dark remote cabins at midnight in the middle of a lightning storm. He's still at work. Okay. You're one-on-one with Satan, and it's just, this, which is what every exorcism movie is. Here's a question for you. Have exorcism and possession movies desensitized us to what perhaps could be the real thing? Because I was looking at some of the comments from the trailer, and there's a picture of William Friedkin with Father Amorth, who is just like the most. We talked about this when we talked about 13 Assassins. Just these unassuming badasses.
Yes.
People that you would walk past them in the street and not give them a second look. They don't look like Dave Bautista. They don't look like the guy who plays Reacher, or anything like that. But, the real badasses. And, he's just this, this unassuming guy, and 90 years old, and he's using a walker. My dad is almost at the point where he needs to use a walker now. He doesn't want to admit it, but, that was the question. Have we become desensitized because what we expect to see are 360-degree head turns, and projections of you expect to see like this window into hell itself, this sort of thing, something at Constantine. Have the movies ruined us from the real thing?
Constantine was close. That movie actually scared me because some of it was actually pretty good, but for the most part, it's either made people used to the idea of possession, which when The Exorcist first came out, no one thought about it, so it made them think about good and evil and theological questions and the possibility of evil spirits and these discorporate entities. All that stuff was a legitimate discussion in 1974. But now, after just tons and tons and tons of movies, you either are like, whatever, possession or whatever, the Nun, or the really bad ones just make it look so stupid that, you sit there and go, Catholics, they're idiots. This can't be real. It can't be anything of any consequence. Catholics are dumb. So, you have those two things,
Yeah. And, it's also funny because in today's religious horror, there are no good guys anymore. The church is often the villain. The church is almost
in the media.
When I saw like The First Omen, when I saw Sydney Sweeney's Immaculate, the closest thing you can get to like a protagonist, or where you have some actual heroes that are related to the church, are like the Conjuring universe. With Ed and Lorraine Warren. Sort of real life demonologist working for the church. The church sends him in to investigate this sort of thing. But increasingly, it's just that the protagonist in today's horror film, possession film, religious horror, has to just become increasingly feral. So like they almost have to become more evil than the evil. And it sort of defeats the purpose of religious horror, if you ask me, in that good overcomes evil. The kindly Father Karras, the kindly Father Marin, those characters, they're not around anymore.
It's become a trope. The either the evil, backroom dealing bishops, or it started a while ago. Like every priest had to be an alcoholic. Like in Constantine, the priest was an alcoholic. But that's been going on for a while. The only positive portrayal of a priest that I can remember off the top of my head is John Carpenter's Vampires. I thought that priest was kind of badass. Oh, and there's that movie, The Priest, which is sort of sci-fi.
Oh, yeah.
But still, it was like,
Anthony Hopkins was pretty good in the right. Hopkins was pretty good in the right.
That's what I'm saying. There have been Catholic stories being told, or at least these stories being told from a religious place that are a little bit more respectful, or showing the church in a different light, but they're also exaggerated. Like the Pope's Exorcist with what's his name?
Russell Crowe.
Yeah, it's not. You have to make it lurid, and you have to make it an action sequence when all it is really just an old guy sitting there praying.
It's a group of people, and that's funny. Thank you for mentioning that, because Father Amorth is now popularized by Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe has taken on the role of Father Amorth, and it looks like he's going to be coming back for maybe 2 more movies, because Father Amorth literally has thousands of possession cases. And are they going to be completely over the top and slightly comedic? I like that Russell Crowe got that part right. Like he's kind of this goofy kind of priest, who makes the nuns giggle, that kind of stuff.
I heard he met him. And sort of did a little research before that movie. So before he passed, so he might have passed on some of that, that personality to him.
It's possible. Hold on a second. Exorcist Reviews is saying, I have a podcast clip from 2012, I think, of Friedkin mentioning Amorth. He came off very skeptical. I'll look for it. Okay. Well, this came out in 2016. So this was done, I think, between May and November of 2016. So if it's 2012, I think he met him for the first time or something like that. That they were meeting for the first time, although I think they had been in communication for a while. And so, it's about 4 years later from the date, if you got that date correct. But
yeah, so his first book came out in 1999.
Okay.
Highly recommend, though. Great book, and it'll make you understand Father Amorth a lot better. It's on Ignatius Press. You can find it most places, Amazon, of course. But I recommend this book a lot, especially if you liked anything you saw in the documentary.
I just passed a Christian. I was on my way to a Dunkin' Donuts the other day, and I'm like, it's a Christian bookstore, a little tiny thing. I got to stop in there, because I would prefer to give them my business than Amazon or something like that. If I could help $20 here, $20 there, I'm sure they appreciate it. We're all in it together, that sort of thing. So,
I'm kind of lucky. I have 2 specifically Catholic bookstores in my neighborhood. One's a little bit of a drive, like a half hour. The other one's right down the street. So I'm spoiled that way.
So, but also what we have to contend with is almost, not completely, but an increasingly secularized society that
Sure.
just doesn't believe in anything anymore.
Yes.
There's more than enough reason to be skeptical of just about everything you see and, everything you hear nowadays. But, that works against, the possibility of some truth being released for you to be able to accept it because, people have just out of hand, gone to dismissing everything. And so, all of these things work in the favor of evil.
Yes, our institutions have blown the trust that people put in them, and deservedly so. You have to be a little bit skeptical, even of the church. After there's numerous reasons even to be skeptical of the church. Not that you don't believe, or at least for me, I don't necessarily disbelieve it, but you always trust but verify, as Reagan said.
Yeah, and that's a reasonable assumption. But I mean, as Catholics, I guess we take certain things as a given. So if for me personally, if I believe in God, then it stands to reason that I'm going to believe in, the devil. I don't live in fear, but as someone else said, it's, you have to give him his due. You kind of have to, it's not something to be dismissive of. Right. And that kind of thing, you just kind of have to make sure that you're doing the right things, that sort of, keep you, out of the crosshairs.
Don't be flippant, so at the same time. Don't let it control you. It's the best part of that documentary was the opening sort of interview with the guy who wrote that book. I can't remember the name of the book, but
William Peter Blatty?
Yeah,
the other guy. Yeah.
He's saying, the more that you think about this stuff, the more that you dwell on this stuff, the worse off you are. And, don't go down the rabbit hole was basically his message. I wholeheartedly agree with that. I did that whole rabbit hole thing when I was in high school, and it really does gives you a spiritual, not damage, but it definitely does. It's dark. Yeah, it's a dark place to go. Like I read so many, like I used to go to the Atlanta County Library before the internet and sit there and read demonology books. I read all the Ed and Lorraine Warren. I read all the stuff about Amityville, the Exorcist. It all started, with reading The Exorcist when I was 11, and I was just obsessed with this stuff. And it took me a long time to get out of that rabbit hole and to sort of take steps away from it, not to disbelieve it or ignore it, but just not to be consumed with, these exorcism things. So,
he talked
a wise piece to open up the movie with.
I thought that it was interesting that he said, he suspected, after writing all these books that he kind of came under a spiritual attack, because he just was hit with this crushing depression.
Yes.
But he's like, but then again, I've been, doing nothing but talking about the devil for years now. That's not light and bright. And so he speaks from experience when he's like, don't go too far, with this kind of stuff. It's best to stay on the the other side of the street, so to speak.
You can do that with anything. Like, if you go down the rabbit hole with UFOs, or you go down the rabbit hole with like the JFK conspiracy, it can consume you and make you depressed. And this is why Michael Malice talks about the white pill, where you shouldn't be taking the black pill. You shouldn't be so, into this stuff that it hurts you spiritually.
So it was great in this to actually see William Peter Blatty also, although that was some archived footage. And, Friedkin's experience comes from Blatty's experience as a Georgetown student, hearing this priest suddenly just sort of go off on this tangent about an exorcism that occurred in 1949 there in Georgetown to a young boy. He had been to doctors and psychiatrists, and they, couldn't give this boy any relief. And so they finally went to the diocese, who enlisted the aid of their exorcist, who was finally able to give this boy, relief, and to alleviate, this possession.
They said it took a while, And that scene in The Exorcist where the words come up on Reagan's chest, that helped me. They said that happened in that exorcism. I read a lot about this one too. They said that the kid had ripped a spring out of the mattress and sort of stabbed the first exorcist with it, and like cut him down his arm really badly, and that's why they transferred him to St. Louis and got a whole other exorcist, because he was very violent. And it took months and months. And it started with a Ouija board. His aunt was like a spiritualist, and after she passed, it affected him badly, and he was contacting her on a Ouija board. So all those details wound up going into the original Exorcist.
I'm going to put a link in the description, probably to this, because I can just find it off Tubi. But I'm also going to put a link in the description to a recent podcast I saw, and Pints with Aquinas. Where they had Father Carlos Martens, who is, one of the more prominent exorcists today. And it's a 3-hour intellectual discussion, and it's anecdotal, but it's also about some of the things that sort of open people up to these types of things.
Yes.
And the girls with the Ouija boards and the tarot cards and the, dabbling in the occult, which is, something that, young girls, they just have this tendency to do haywire shit. It's not that, then it's, but, it's always something that they do go off on this tangential sort of thing that ends up being kind of self-destructive. And sometimes when you open these doors, something's waiting on the other side, and he said with men, it tends to be more sexual perversion that opens them up to these sorts of things. With girls, it's the one thing. With the guys, it's another. Sometimes it's generational. Sometimes it's trauma. It can be anything, that remains unresolved.
Yes.
That sort of darkness can just kind of keep scratching at, the wound, that, never gets debrided, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now that it goes without saying, the church is really, really heavily into pursuing therapy and psychoanalysis long before you ever say, oh, well, you've opened the door to a evil spirit.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff is just childhood trauma manifesting itself,
And mental illness.
Yes, absolutely.
Which absolutely, I think we probably have a better understanding of demonic possession than we do of mental illness.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Like, nobody understands anything about mental illness. And I thought it was so sad, and it gripped me when they went to, I think, Columbia University, and they said they had somebody in the hospital right there who claimed that they were possessed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, whether you believe it or don't believe it, the reality is that these people are suffering.
Yes.
And so, if 9 out of 10 of them or 95% of them are disqualified for whatever reasons, and Father Martens talked about different tests that they can put people through that, pretty much will, prove whether something is, actually happening to you, related to the diabolical, these people are hurting.
Yeah.
And so, we see this kindly, sort of old man roll on his walker into this room, and then all of a sudden you're in the middle of an exorcism.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I was sort of like, I remember the first time I saw it, it really took me off guard. I didn't know what to expect. You might find some of this on YouTube. You might, I don't remember. But I mean, it was just this brightly lit room, and that's the room there because they didn't, IMDb isn't showing any of the pictures. And it's this girl, this woman named Christina, who's like in her early 40s. It's filled with priests and friends and relatives and family, I guess, who are just there to support her. How do they support her? Through prayer.
Yeah.
And it's just Father Martin, Father Amorth leading this procession of prayer. And I guess what freaked me out the most was that the way it kind of switched on and off. What did you think about that with Christina? Like, she was fine and then she wasn't. And then it sort of snapped and then it was over with. And you're like, what the fuck just, like, how did that just switch off like that?
I was a little bit skeptical about it. Partly because I thought the growling was enhanced on the film itself.
You think there was sound editing involved?
Yes. I do. I think it. I mean, I. It's not that I want to believe. I just want to go into it with an open mind. I would need to do some more research. I'm not going to take Friedkin totally at his word, because I kind of think he made this movie to sort of, be tittillating and make money. He's like, oh, we got an exorcism. It's kind of like the Geraldo and
Al Capone's vault.
Al Capone's vault. But at the same time, that was a real exorcism. That's what happened. So even if it wasn't possessed by the devil, if she believed it, then she's reacting to these prayers in a certain way. So I couldn't tell from the movie and what I saw if I believe it or not, but it is sort of exactly what Amorth describes in his book. Not necessarily this case, but as a typical exorcism.
I think they said that 500,000 Italians every year petition the church over what they claim, is possession.
Yeah.
500,000, 500,000 Italians every single year. Now, I imagine 90%, get weeded out in the, in the testing process, in the trials, selection, that sort of thing.
Right.
Father Martin said one time, I can't remember exactly what he said, but they had done something to test this guy. He dropped like a touch of holy water. He got behind the guy and just like a tip of holy water on its finger. He touched the guy's like sport coat, and the guy just completely fucking like lost it.
That's some scary stuff.
Yeah. I questioned whether there was sound editing involved, but here was my thing. I can't see at that point in Friedkin's career, like there's no money to be made off. This isn't going to make any money.
Right.
It's not, it's just like what would be the, like maybe for some titillation. Okay. But like at that point, just career, I can't see the rationale, and I can't see the rationale with Father Amorth going along with it.
What's the rationale of putting the scary music in the background? It's all designed to make the film have an impact. You're still trying to communicate something. I don't think he's trying to put one over on anyone. I just think he's trying to make as good a film as he's able to, at however old he is, 89 or whatever.
I see the point. I won't say that he did. I guess it's possible, but I remain skeptical. That he did. It's entirely possible that he did. I don't know. But I mean, do you think that Christina was possessed? You're not sure?
I don't know. Okay. There was some question. I think it was set up to be, there was some questioning about whether it was honest or whether it was, something made up. I mean, it says something that her whole family was there, or at least people who say their family was there, and, her boyfriend is there holding her down. But at the same time, there's all this violence, but, Father Amorth's just sitting right there and never gets touched. So
no.
It seems a little weird. They weren't really restraining her as much as you would think. And, there were plenty of opportunities for violence and didn't happen. So I don't know. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not an expert.
There's an interesting podcast called The Exorcist Files from Carlos Martens, and so you can find it on any place that, Spotify, any place you can find podcasts. When I went to see The Relic of St. Jude, when it appeared at my parish, they had a big sign for it up there in the outer vestibule. Is that what you call it? Like the outer in the vestibule? They had a big sign up there, and it's dramatizations, but also with Father Martin's commentary about what exactly happened in those particular cases. And again, I'm going to put that link for Pints of Aquinas if you want to hear like a real 3-hour conversation without any actual footage.
Yeah.
Because the claim has been over the years that it violates the privacy of the family of the possessed and the family. Yeah, it absolutely does. Blatty and I think Friedkin trying for years to get the actual family from 1949 to participate in the original story. That became The Exorcist, and they all said they wanted nothing to do with it.
Yeah, that's a good move.
Yeah, because you're just going to be opening yourself up to everyone, from religious fanatics to the regular people to the everyone else who just wants to shit on, bag you, and this is bullshit, and it, and who needs it?
Yeah, if it really is no good footage of exorcisms, though. There's a couple of weird grainy things, like one from Africa I saw, one from some Protestant church, but there aren't a whole lot of that because
you got to be skeptical of the Protestant.
Skeptical, but I'll tell you what will blow back your hair. You're familiar with the Exorcism of Emily Rose?
Oh, the Annalise Michelle tapes,
right? That tape freaks me out every time I listen to it.
It's on YouTube. If anybody wants to, if you ever want to just type in Annalise Michelle, and it's Nero and Judas and Hitler and
the things that are being said and the way that they're being said is very on point, and it's very, very scary. And I've read the entire transcript and I listened to it in the original German, and it's no bullshit. So that one, really, I have no doubts that was genuine.
Yeah, and to this day, the church, Carlos Martens was talking about that in the Aquinas podcast, and he's like, absolutely, that girl was possessed. He had a number of complaints about the way some things were done procedurally. Some things were handled, but he's like, absolutely, that was like a legitimate case.
The German priest dropped the ball on that, but I'm convinced that one is an actual exorcism.
Yeah.
So I can't say that the one in this Unsolved Mysteries episode was really genuine, but
at least it wasn't Robert Stack. And so, have we been affected? Have we been desensitized? Probably. I mean, how many exorcism or possession movies have we, seen? I've seen ones that I've fallen asleep in the middle of. This is so fucking dumb. I can't stand, that kind of thing.
Most of them are garbage, man. I watch like the first 20 minutes, and as soon as they say something completely dumb, I just switch the channel because I can't take it. There's been very few recent exorcism movies that I can actually stand to watch. The first season of the Exorcist series on Fox was great, but there's very few that I can hang with.
Hold on, what's happening, man? Mike over here from Divine Will. And he says, I work with an exorcist who was trained by Father Amorth. He said the movie is pretty far away from the truth. He said the movie Emily Rose was pretty accurate. Mike, I'll tell you what. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a link for this in the chat. Mike, if you want to come in just to hang out and shoot the breeze, you're welcome to do so.
Yeah.
I was just telling Bill that you're probably mad at me because I didn't come watch the Tyson Fury fight this weekend. So I hope you'll forgive me. But if you want to come on in, man, come on in and come just shoot the shit with us. Exorcist Reviews says the film towards the end kind of threw me. Everything we didn't get to see because Friedkin couldn't film it, where allegedly they got threatened.
Yeah.
That was maybe the scariest part, and it was weird because it just kind of left it up to your imagination to kind of picture what exactly. And so, what it would be like to see a possessed person outside of an exorcism, like, in a face-to-face encounter, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that one I'm more skeptical of than the actual footage. That story didn't sit right with me. And it might have been the way it was presented in the film, just to be, scary. But I don't know. Maybe, I guess. I mean, there's no film.
We're just talking. He said Mike Blatty told me, and that's William Peter Blatty's son, because Exorcist Reviews has had Mike Blatty on his channel. Told me that he could confirm the Hunkler family name. He told me he came across a letter from them addressed to his dad back when they were working on the film. Okay. Yeah, I mean, especially back then. Could you imagine today?
What?
If you were, like if you were to just go public, with an exorcism or possession in this like social media age, holy shit,
Destroyed, man. But
yeah,
Butker, all he did was say, it's okay to be a mom and a housewife, and
yeah.
he's getting dragged across.
They want him to get fired from the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, and that's just for him.
Andy Reid has to come out and say, what the hell's wrong with you people?
Yeah, can you imagine coming out and just trying to say, yeah, I was possessed? No way, man.
Yeah, not good.
You got to keep locked down.
So
if you don't know about it, there's a great new internet sort of TikTok, Instagram exorcist out there. It's been popping up for the last year or so. Monsignor Stephen Rossetti, really, really fantastic guy. His videos are way interesting. They're on point, and I came to him through a app called the Exorcism app, where he has prayers for the laity if they think that they are, experiencing any evil spirits. So it's really, really worth checking out.
There's so much talk online and Catholic Twitter about spiritual attack. People that feel that, they are currently under, and they just ask for prayers. They ask for prayers and, pray for me, I'm having a tough time, or, thoughts are popping in my head that are just like, where the hell is that coming from? This kind of thing. Is that a common thing? Is it a sign of the times? As we increasingly seem to be, snowballing into more and more conflict in almost every aspect of life.
Yeah.
Is evil with a capital E making its move? That kind of thing. It certainly would seem so.
Yeah, I would say so. It's definitely a lot more evil going on in the world now than, let's say, the 1950s. I would definitely say that it's possible that every third anxiety attack is actually some kind of spiritual attack. I don't know.
It's possible. It's very possible.
I mean, I don't know. I'm not an exorcist, but that's the kind of thing that Monsignor Rossetti covers on Instagram. He talks about possession, spiritual attack, and what to do about it, and why it's happening more now. It's pretty interesting.
Okay, you'll have to text me some of that stuff.
Okay,
I'll see if I can find them. Well, I can't find them. Just send me the links. Now, what I thought was, hey, hold on a second.
What do we got?
What's up, man?
Hey.
Hello. Hi. Hello, Bill. Hello, Mike. Nice to see you both.
What's happening, man? How's the life? How's things?
Doing great. Great. I was looking at my phone and you popped up and I said, this is a movie I'm interested in. And
now, are you Dr.
James?
Dr. James. So this
Michael,
is Dr. James.
Michael James. Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know what you were. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So this is Mike. And yeah, Mike is
I have a
long time ago.
Yeah, and I actually Mike, American Werewolf, he told me a lot about YouTubing, and I hooked up with an exorcist priest, and I've been connecting him through YouTube for people for a while now, and he was a student of Father Amorth over in Rome as a young man. He's over in Rome now. He's a Vatican trained theologian.
Is this Father Nuzzi?
Yeah, and he was trained by Father Amorth. He knows him. He knew him very, very well. And he's an exorcist himself, and everything his exorcism priestcraft was all trained by Father Amorth. And you have a lot of topics, very, very interesting topics you guys are touching on. So,
well, I mean, have you seen this, The Devil and Father Amorth?
I have not seen it because it was so poo-pooed by Father Iannuzzi.
Okay.
He just said it was nothing like the man. It's very Hollywood up.
Okay.
Yeah. That was his reaction to it. I did not.
Yeah,
see it.
I mean,
but I think what's interesting about Father Amorth's books, if you ever had the chance to read it, it's really when you walk away from his books, I find he's so quick to admit he doesn't understand this stuff. He can't put it in really nice categories. Like he says this certain way. He goes, some demons do this, some demons do that. It doesn't make any sense. There's no neat little compartments that he puts demonology into. And he says, he doesn't know. Sometimes they just don't leave. And you walk away from the book saying, oh my goodness. And it's almost like I find it to be a very suggests an authenticity to it, because he doesn't have it figured out in nice categories. He just says, this is some crazy stuff and it's real and I don't understand it. That was a great takeaway from Father Amorth.
I was just saying earlier, I was watching the Pints with Aquinas on YouTube, and Father Carlos Martens was on there, kind of saying the same thing. You know, sometimes this works. If not, I try something else. You know, he goes, you know, I kind of have a structure, and, you know, maybe I'll follow the ritual, but sometimes I'll just pray. You know, and I'll have other people in the room with me, and, you know, I make sure that they're stable people, and, you know, that they've, you know, everything's, you know, on the level with them, you know, and I'll just have them pray, you know. And so, you know, it seems like this trial and error kind of thing that, you know, because he said you can never trust anything that you hear.
Yep.
And something else that's interesting, without getting too into the weeds, but there's different kinds of demons, right? They're different kind of life forms. They're not generic. You know, there's different kinds of demons, different levels of strategies. They're intelligent beings, and you know, it's just not a trite recipe type of encounter. They just like human beings are diverse. You know, these types of beings are diverse, and these encounters are very, very different. They don't fall into a little recipe that would make a lot of religious people more comfortable with.
It's certainly not something that, I mean, because at some point in the second half, Bishop Barron is part of the documentary, and he makes it very clear that it's not something that just anyone can do.
Yeah, that was a real good comment from him, where he was like, it takes someone with a lot more spiritual training and strength than I have. And I was like, oh, wow. He's going to admit that, you know.
Right.
Yeah, and he was almost kind of uncomfortable, you know, because Friedkin was kind of pressing him. He's like, well, wait a minute, you're a bishop. He goes, that's not relevant necessarily, you know. He goes, you know, it's you have to be a very specific, you have to be, you know, a very holy kind of person. And like, I would associate Bishop Barron, you know, you see the Word on Fire, and you know, he's always on Jordan Peterson, and you know, so maybe he sort of lists himself more in the academic side of, you know, of the priesthood, you know, and in the church, you know, maybe he's not, you know, kind of an action guy. So to speak.
You know, one thing is that exorcism, demonic possession, is very rare, and you know, to be called for that exorcism should be very rare too. And I thought it was really interesting what you guys were talking about why does it seem to be this uptick in popularity and talk. And you can see like a couple different things, because one, in the era of social media, you know, it becomes very popular and it attracts a lot of people who might be off balance and have a odd fascination with demons and the supernatural, what have you. You also have the Pentecostal movement, really for the past 100 years, how that attracts all Christian religions. And it's, you know, this, you know, it's like this reaction to scientificism and modernity, this sort of, you know, worldview that embraces the mystical, right? So those types of people are going to be prone to kind of feed this. And you're going to have a lot of fakes and a lot of theaters and a lot of, you know, Pastor Joe, get the cameras out. I'm going to exorcise my brother now. And you know, and you know, the shakes, you know,
the showmans, the
showmans. Yeah. And you're going to have, I mean, that's not just Protestant, but you'll have Catholic priests who get into it, and they like the showmanship, and they like the popularity, and they like talking about it, and they like the hits. But then you also have this idea of, well, is evil really increasing on our planet? You know, have we, the farther we get away from Adam's sin, is evil increasing? Is the moral compass ending? Are we becoming more bloodthirsty, more divorced from things decent and spiritual? And is this a rise in demonic activity? I think it could be all those factors. I think could be playing a part in it.
Well, Mike, you said before, you brought up how the apostles and Jesus had to fight off unclean spirits, and it was all around them. I think as Catholics and as Christians, we got real used to having this position where people at least recognized, the church, and we were a Christian nation, whatever. That's starting to go away, and we're starting to be put back into the position of the early church, where it's just us against the world instead of us in a Christian milieu. And if evil's not increasing, at least we're going to start seeing it more.
Yeah, and what I could briefly add, I think you're absolutely right, Bill. And I think I could briefly add is you also see this transition away from Christian Western civilization into a very secular state religion, right? You have this, you have this replacement where Christianity is known as evil, and a more secular religion, and the religion of the nation, the religion of humanity, it's been called, is replacing that and making it smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yeah. There's a great book by Douglas Murray called The Strange Death of Europe. And he talks about how at the beginning of the new millennium, essentially Europeans cast off Christianity and said, we don't need that anymore. We have human rights, sort of completely ignoring the fact that the concept of Western human rights are rooted in Judeo-Christian values. So what they essentially did was pull the spiritual backbone out of their belief system, and then open the floodgates for immigration to people who clearly have their own spiritual or religious, at least, roots that are, just completely bowling over these secularized sort of guys who can't figure out what to do except run in the other direction now. He talks about, almost this suicidal kind of empathy that they're employing now. There's no backbone anymore.
Yep. It always reminds me of that meme. What happened when mankind entered the Age of Enlightenment and finally cast off all the superstitions? And the answer is genocide, mostly.
Wow, what a great topic. Yeah. And when man declares, you know what, we're God now. It's human power. We don't need a Western civilization philosophy that looks at the connection between nature, divinity, and humans. It's going to be, we are not only God, but we can control nature. We can control everything. We can build everything. And we're going to find that utopian earth. And when man says, we don't need you, God, we're going to be God, it's exactly the same thing that Lucifer did and Adam did, magnified and magnified.
That's the argument in that's a bit of the argument in the Grand Inquisitor, isn't it, with Dostoevsky? We don't need you anymore. We have the institution now.
Yes.
We don't need you.
So
I know who you are.
Yeah.
I know who you are. I know exactly who you are.
The castle.
So we see how that's so that's
what's playing out part of the bureaucracy. Yeah.
For those hundreds of years coming to fruition, and they'll be playing out. But I wanted to ask Bill, if I could, Mike.
Yeah.
In your travels, now that you're approaching your 40s or what have you, and in your maybe religious circle travels, maybe you found, how many people have you found testify to some type of witnessing of demonic activity or any kind of thing like that? Have you heard people tell you stories? Not a lot.
Not a whole lot. Here and there. But not a lot of people are just going to start saying, well, I saw a ghost, or I was using a Ouija board. You don't see that much. A lot of it is shame-based, because we went through the demonic panic, or the satanic panic of the 80s. My generation, we all grew up laughing about this because it got to a ridiculous point when we were kids, when we were teenagers. And we remember that, and no one wants to really talk about this anymore. You can talk about a movie like the movies about the Warrens, but it's never like, why why did I throw my brother's Ouija board out in the trash?
That's really interesting. I didn't think of that. Because the 80s was really the height of the Pentecostal movement in first world countries, right? Really fizzled out pretty fast right after that. And then it played out in third world countries where we still see it today. And it's still booming today. But yeah, the 80s and all of the televangelists and the 700 Club and having such a fixation on demonic activity, that pushback of, the devil's in everything, the devil's in the Ouija board, and that sort of shame that would be applied. And so now maybe, a couple decades removed from that, you begin to see this sort of coming back with this sort of, trendiness of all things demons, maybe.
The thing that I do see, though, is a lot of people who are not shamed to claim themselves as witches or Satanists. I know that's a little different because a lot of Satanists are actually just atheists being jerk-offs, but we have a common friend who hardcore atheist and witch, Hail Satan every 2 minutes, and I don't know if it's a belief in actual evil or if it's just making fun of Christians who do believe that.
I tend to think it's the latter. I remember Gavin McGinnis saying, Satanism isn't really a religion. It's just spite. It's for like people that are mad at their dead. Like, it's like, if you found out you had a tumor, or if you had, your loved one had a tumor, like you're not praying to Lucifer. It's just for people that are angry at their dead. But then there are, and that's probably the vast majority.
No one's praying. No one's praying to Lucifer in the trenches at war.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm inclined to think with our mutual friend that it probably is the latter. She just kind of wants to stick it in people's eye, that kind of thing. The Antifa, whatever thing, that she's got going on. But there probably are, real people out there that are, into some twisted shit, some really dark stuff, and we talk about this, and what I've said, increasingly is that, you see the higher quality of movies. There's some movies that are just schlock, but if you look at a movie like The Exorcist, to me at this point, and Blatty said this early on, it depends on what type of person you are. If you want to see pea soup, you're going to see pea soup. If you want to see faith and like selfless, voluntary self-sacrifice, and people all rushing into the void, strangers, 4 men, to save this little girl, then that's what you're going to see too. 2 complete strangers give their life for a complete stranger, a 12-year-old girl they never met before. So that's Father Karras finding his faith again. That's as much, if not more, of the story than the horror. Father Marin finding out in the first 5 minutes that he's going to die. He finds it when he finds that one little relic. He understands instantly what it means. And he's like, oh, I have to go back. Father Karras losing his faith. He can't even protect it. He can't even help his mother, because he's so busy listening to everyone else's problem as the psychiatrist. Kinderman, trying to solve this murder. Even like the manservant Carl, who just, sits there with the chair in front of the door and like changes her diapers because she's, constantly soiling herself. So there are all these other things that are going on other than, the, kind of stuff, and they're, I think, of more importance than the horror. And that's what makes it such a great film. I thought the best part in this documentary, though, was that author that Bill was talking about, who wrote all these books on, the devil. And he said, the thing of it is that, like the possession is just about the body. He goes, the worst part about it isn't anything to do with that. It's the way that evil sort of tempts you to sin. That's how they get your soul.
Yeah.
The possession is just an issue of your physical body being seized, but much more common and in all of our lives is the temptation, and we all do it, to sin.
Yeah.
That's the real hook. While you're looking over here, at this, bright shiny thing, You
the
know, what are you
upside
doing
down
on
cross isn't the problem. It's, you know.
Yeah, it's maybe it's your phone, or you know, you're having too many beers at the bowling league, you know, or you know, this kind of. There are all kinds of everyday things that are just happening that you know you're not picking up the, you know, you're not picking up the pieces, the stumbling blocks, you know, that are placed in front of all of us every single day. That's the heat.
Yeah. If
That's
I could
where the
jump in
heat is.
on that point, Mike, you
Yeah.
know, the like we mentioned before, like the demonic possession is the extreme event, but I mean, if we entertain the Christian framework for a little bit, then demons are a part of our everyday life. Demons are a pull, a hold, a fixation. It might not be a possession. It can be a fixation. It can be obsessive thinking. It could be all types of manipulation that's occurring. How many times in our lives when we said, I really didn't want to do that. Why do I feel a tug to do this again? And what is tugging me to keep on doing this thing that I did not want to do?
Influence.
Yeah.
The atheist is going to
Influence.
say that, you know, bringing up evil spirits and demonic possession is just us looking to relieve ourselves of the responsibility of our own lack of ability to not sin,
to self-regulate.
Yeah, which is a legitimate possibility. That might be occurring too.
But coming from people who just have no compulsion to even try to avoid sinning, they just jump into sin gladly and think it's a positive, doesn't bother me all that much.
Yeah. It really is interesting once you kind of go in with an open mind, you know, and like the bias, right? We might have a bias to try to explain behavior in a certain way. I can explain this behavior in my atheistic worldview, and I can explain my behavior as my mind and this or whatever. But if you kind of let go of these biases that we have and say, well, what, you know, and start reflecting and see how, you know, sometimes of your behavior and your experience, how that might really align to some of these ideas, that really there's demonic entities that I perceive that are pulling me one way or another. The possibility of that is just as strong as the possibility of this psychological stuff that we can't understand that's moving us. You know, it's the same. It has the same intellectual legitimacy. We just don't know. But there's a reason to believe both, and that demons are influencing our behavior.
I think it's important to mention, as I was saying kind of in the beginning, that, you know, it's not something that you necessarily need to, you know, be frightened of, or, you know, or anything like that. You know, you have to give it its due respect. But as long as you're, you know, doing everything that you can to sort of stay on the right path, then, you know, it greatly decreases the likelihood that you come into these sorts of crosshairs. You know, these sorts of things. You know, the three of us as Catholics, you know, making the mass and, you know, getting a regular confession and, you know, taking communion, you know, these sorts of things. That's, you know, that goes a long way to, you know, lightening your load, you know, and that sort of, you know, everyday, you know, things that you can do. It's, you know,
I forget who the saint is, but there's a story about a saint who was always woken up in the middle of the night by a demon sitting on the foot of her bed, and she would roll over and go, "Oh, it's you," and then roll over and go back to sleep, because that's really how you should treat these demonic entities, is that you ignore them, because ultimately they aren't anywhere near
God. Yeah. You know, one of you know, when you think, like, theologically speaking, Lucifer isn't the rival of God at all. He's the rival of Saint Michael, some other angel. You know, it's on a whole different stratosphere. And and part of, you know, the unhealthy fixation about demons is allotting them too much power. Then they're everywhere and they're doing this and they're doing that. But to remember that, you know, they have as much, you know, theologically speaking, to people who entertain the Christian worldview, they have as much power as God gives them. You know, they have as much power as God gives them, and God allows us to be tested by them. And some really saintly people, he allows them even more to have to give us the opportunity to overcome these temptations, to really achieve tremendous merit for the glory of God that will go on forever and ever and ever. This opportunity in time and space while we're alive to actually suffer and to actually be tempted and to actually have demons try to influence us, and to give us the opportunity to hit a home run, hit a single, hit a double, not completely strike out every single time. That's the wonderful gift. So the ironic thing is that God makes beautiful things even out of ugly demons that want to do us harm.
I'm listening to 33 Days to Morning Glory on Hollow with Sister Miriam, and she was talking about that with Mother Teresa. Sometimes the closer you are to suffering, that may be the closer that you're getting to God. This allowance to, as he, suffers on the cross, to allow you to share in some small part, what that suffering is like, that isolation and that pain and, that sort of thing. And she said she's had people saying, tell him to stop kissing me, like I've had enough, like give me a break, these sorts of things. But, there's some truth in that, there's a higher understanding. There's a higher understanding than our understanding, and there's a higher understanding for, why we struggle and, why we, feel sometimes the negative things that we feel. Life is tough. It's not always easy. So, you got to bear all that in mind. It's, what's that old saying? Context is king.
Yeah.
I think it was James Baldwin who said that. So, context is king. All right. Is there any particular point from the documentary, whether you saw it or did not see it, or is there any particular point that you'd like to address that we did not cover?
Not really. I'm just going to emphasize the Father Amorth giving the
yeah. Thumb his nose at the devil. Yeah. He said he can't wait to go to heaven. So he said he can't wait to go to heaven so he can beat the devil with a stick. Nice. So he's like, I can't wait to get that. And to live a life tonight at he was like a partisan in World War II. Mm-hmm. He wasn't, he was pretty rough guy, and then just went on to become a priest, and then went on to become like the Exorcist of Rome. Yeah. So these interpretations that we see, like by Russell Crowe, they're enjoyable. But you probably aren't getting a sense of the real man. So, maybe I'll check out some of those books. I don't know if I want to read a lot of books on, possession and that kind of stuff.
No, it's not fun. I was younger when I read it. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it. No.
I was just telling Bill, like 25 years ago, I read Malachi Martens' Hostage to the Devil, and it scared the bejesus out of me.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you're just like, what the hell is this? And I'm like, I get it, Maybe I'll just stick with The Conjuring or that sort of, that kind of thing. Just keep it fun. Let's
rabbit hole's way in the past.
Yeah. I don't see what's to be gained. I appreciate what that author said. Just don't do it. Like, don't do that to yourself.
I can report that in my travels, because I went to school for theology, and I went to Catholic, and I was in a Roman Catholic seminary, and I have good friendships with religious people and religious academics, and I've heard a lot of people who have been in the room, right? Lay people, they've just been in the room. They were the chosen ones to go in and pray during exorcisms, and they all have reports. They all have reports of the coldness of the room, even though it was a summer day. And these are legitimate, educated, professional academics or priests. And they all have common things to say, that whenever they were allowed to participate in exorcism, there was always something of a phenomenon that occurred. And I've heard that on more than I would say 10 people, which really leads me to think, for me, that there's something there to this, and there's something mysterious, and that it's not very much like Hollywood. But there is something to be beyond, there's a lot of fakes, there's a lot of frauds, there's a lot of hype these days, but whenever there is a lot of counterfeits, there's something very, very real.
And we were saying, probably 9 out of 10 get weeded out by the church anyway, because they have pretty stringent testing, physiological, psychological, psychiatric testing. I saw someone say, I forget maybe it was Pints with Aquinas. It was some podcast I was watching, and the priest said, we told the person that they weren't possessed. It's not possession. And the guy took it well, and they're like, well, how are you doing? And he's like, well, I'm disappointed. He's like, like no one can tell me what's wrong with me. And that was something we were saying earlier too, is that, we probably understand, within certain circles more about, this sort of supernatural phenomena than we do just about everyday mental illness.
Yep.
And that was the point, that he was lucid enough to say, like, you can tell me that it's not this, you can tell me that it's this, but you can't tell me, how to get some relief from it. So what we were saying earlier is that, whether it is mental illness, or if you're faking it, you probably are mentally ill. People are suffering.
Yeah.
And so, regardless of the reason why, there are a lot of people suffering out there. And so, keep in your prayers. And
I'm not sure how long I missed the first half of the show, but, something else is very interesting, that it's always like this long-term thing that happens with exorcism. It's not this walk in, the power of Christ, bam, 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 firework. I mean, these guys are going in like therapy. They're going in, twice a week, 3 times a week, months and months and months doing this work, and you're seeing slow progress.
It's like weightlifting. Spiritual development's like weightlifting. You never see the results, and then 6 months down the line, you go, "Oh shit, check that out!"
Absolutely, yeah. That's something else that's interesting about that. And I know you guys might be tired to go, but let me kick back to that, the devil worshiping friend that you spoke about earlier, Bill and Mike, and and that ties with something else we said. In these post-Christian times, where there's a militant point of view that Christianity is evil, Christianity is the devil, Christianity is the tradition of misogyny and racism, and Christianity needs to be stopped by a new form of morality and justice. And that's where I think a lot of this, this blatant, militant, the Judeo-Christian tradition's evil, and we're going to speak up and replace it with something pure. I think that's really a lot of all that worshiping the devil blatantly comes out of as well. And we see that in other parts of our culture and political realm.
Every empire for the last 2,000 years,
Well, thanks for letting me.
I was looking at the private chat for a second.
Yeah.
Wait, what did you just say? I'm sorry, I was reading something else.
I just said thanks for letting me frozen.
No. I was just reading. There were some private chats that I didn't see. You guys were. You put Bill. You put a quote in here. What was it?
Yeah, it's just something reminded me of that quote from Teresa Villa, but I didn't want to interrupt, so I just
if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder you have so few. I'm like, hey, thanks a lot. All right,
that was like her prayer after like a series of unfortunate incidents, including the wheel falling off of her wagon, and someone had said something like, the holy have to suffer. You're joining with Christ in suffering, and her prayer was like,
okay, no,
your friends, no wonder you have so few.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like we were saying, it's just we're so desensitized now and secularized that, maybe it has become us versus the world kind of thing again. I don't know.
Hey, you want to know something interesting about exorcisms? That just occurred to me, and I don't want to take. I'm sorry, I don't mean to take this conversation nowhere. But Father Amorth used to not only exorcise demons, but he would exorcise dead people in hell who would possess people. And
I didn't know you could do that.
Yeah, neither did I. But dead people in hell that would also work with demons and they're dead humans. And something.
So somebody so you went down there and you got a job. They're like, you're so fucking evil. Let's you want a job down here? It's you. All right, yeah.
It's yeah. So
I assume it's like a prison thing where to survive you're going to hook up with the strong guy on the floor or something.
Agents of the devil, human beings, angels who choose the devil, human beings who choose the devil, and even something he would call non-human intelligent life working with the devil. For that. That's what Amorth thought. Wow. Whether he was 100% accurate, that's up for debate. But Amorth would classify these different kinds of exorcisms, and that's a little bit of a top secret thing that he only told the close people.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah,
I have a hard time reconciling all that with this, little tiny, kindly old man. Look at this guy.
Oh.
Like, he looks like somebody's like great uncle or something, I mean, it's the most unassuming guy, you'd ever like, I don't know what you would expect, but like you wouldn't expect that, this old man just rolling in on a walker, and just, praying over these people. God bless him,
Wait, Kenny looks like Russell Crowe.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, Russell Crowe's a little burly. He's got the beard, this kind of thing. He's got a sense of humor, and now he's popularized. So, I mean, in some form, maybe more people are gonna get to know, a bit about Father Amorth, even if they're watching the Russell Crowe interpretation. So, some good does come of it, and that the church has a hero. Once again, in this small way, instead of, more horror movies where the church is always the villain nowadays, the church is always, the evil institution, these sorts of things. So, some good does come of it. And maybe someone will even watch this documentary or, read some of his books or, maybe someone will see this episode, that sort of thing and spin off. All right. I'm going to do something different. I'm not going to rate this because and it just, I don't know. It seems like it would sort of cheapen the experience. I don't know for me. So it doesn't work for me this time. So we're just going to bypass it. But I'll tell you what, Bill, do you got me, when I call you, plug something that's going on with you, then we'll go from there. And then I'll go to Mike and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, I 100% have nothing.
Okay, no bands going on this?
Otto's Jacket broke up. I'm looking for a new band. Anyone who wants to play surf instrumental music in Monmouth County and along the Jersey Shore, get a hold of me through Mike. Okay,
yeah, you need a blues band, man. You need a blues band. There's a three-man blues band. That's all. Like that's 12. That's perennial. Just keeps going. People listen to blues 12 months out of the year. No problem.
Okay.
All right, Mike, what do you got for us? Tell us something, what's going on. Tell us about your channel and what you got coming up or what's going on now.
I can tell you my channel's devoted to a student of Father Amorth. He's an exorcist. He's a Vatican-trained theologian. He gives many, many talks and retreats. That's all on our YouTube channel, Divine Will Era. You can look him up. Just type in Father Joseph Iannuzzi, and he has many, many very interesting things to say. Very intelligent academic, and you can check out some of his work on Divine Will Era YouTube channel.
All right. And I will put a link to your YouTube channel in the description because I had no idea you were going to stop. And Bill had mentioned, and I'm like, well, he's probably still mad about the Tyson Fury.
I was. You missed a great fight.
I can't stand Tyson Fury.
It was a great fight. Great fight. But don't worry, I'll be watching the Mike Tyson fight, even though.
Oh, yeah, on Netflix. I hope he knocks the living daylights out of that jerk.
Oh, wouldn't that be great?
Well, I mean, the thing about Logan Paul, is it Jake Paul? It's Jake Paul. It's Jake Paul. The thing about Jake Paul is the American dream. Yeah, it really is. I mean, he had nothing, and he just turned it now into, millions of dollars. He turned himself into a jerk. He's a heel on purpose. He clearly has a little bit of boxing ability. He has boxing ability because, you can't get in there with all those MMA guys, even if you're only doing boxing.
Sure.
And, not get pieced up. And he hasn't. I think he's on every chemical known to man to enhance himself. But, I mean, this is going to be a real test with Tyson. I mean, Tyson
if he goes into beast mode, that kid is done.
Yeah,
he may have some skill, but if Tyson gets that eye of the tiger thing, if he's looking like he did in that last fight where he could kill this kid, even at 56 years old. You know?
Yeah, Tyson was saying, you couldn't knock out Anderson Silva. He's like, Anderson Silva's like $185. You couldn't knock out Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz was like, it was Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz is like 170. He's like, how are you going to knock me out? And he's like, you're fat, and like you're not even in shape. And he's like, well, Buster Douglas was fat. And Tyson just looked at him. He goes, you're no Buster Douglas. He goes, forget it. He goes, whatever, man. If we're going to do this, I guess we're going to find out.
I don't have any hate for Jake Paul. He's putting up a fight that people want to see, no matter what you can say about it. We're going to watch. And I think it's so wonderful that it's a real professional sanctioned fight. It's going to be on their record, no expedition. I think Tyson has an uphill battle, but I'll be rooting for him with my whole heart.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's really rooting for Jake Paul. And I think what's going to happen is that the first time he loses, like his 15 minutes are kind of going to be over. So he's just milking it for as long as he can. And hey, he's making millions of dollars, and God bless him, I wish I had thought of it, So yeah, why the hell not? Now it's going to Netflix. So good for him. All right. My thanks to Bill the Revelator, and my thanks to Mike over there at Divine Will Era for stopping in and adding something to the conversation here. My thanks to Exorcist Reviews who popped in. I'm sorry people couldn't make it in here today. It's odd that it finally just boiled down to 3 Catholics. We wanted to get some other perspectives, some other people who sort of focus on these things but might be secular. It didn't pan out. Turned out to be three Catholics, which works out fine for me. My thanks to everybody. We will see you all in the next video. God bless you, everybody, and take care. All the best.